people are already drinking coffee. I mean, 164 million Americans will get up tomorrow morning and drink a cup of coffee. Given the fact that they're already doing this, this is a great 2% shift in their diet to do something they do every single day and improve that on a consistent basis. So we sort of joke that it's the supplement you never forget to take. I mean, it's like nobody forgets to take their cup of coffee in the morning.
Welcome to the Dean's List, engaging conversations at the intersection of entrepreneurship, artistic expression, and holistic health. Experience wellness in full color, where fashion, beauty, and art blend with body, mind, and soul. Embark on a journey that dresses your aspirations in style, paints your life with beauty, and sculpts your well-being in every dimension. This is the Dean's List, where inspiration is always in session. Welcome to the Dean's List, where we brew up conversations at the intersection of entrepreneurial drive, health innovation, and creative prowess. I'm your host, Allison Dean, and today we're percolating with excitement as we welcome Andrew Salisbury, the founder and CEO of Purity Coffee. Driven by a personal quest to improve health through better coffee, Andrew turned a challenge into an opportunity, uncovering the remarkable health benefits of coffee and creating a brand that prioritizes wellness and sustainability. And they also announced that they are now B Corp certified, so congrats. Join us as we dive into how Andrew is steeping the coffee world with fresh ideas and transforming every cup into a healthier choice. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to have you since I'm clearly a fan and have been one. All right. So I typically start with just like, can you share your journey? Let's walk us through the path that led you to launching Purity.
Yeah, and it really didn't start necessarily as a business for me. I had a software company in Latin America that I built up and sold, and it was very, very different than coffee. I mean, it was large sales that would take a year and a half to close. I knew my top 100 customers in Latin America, and to go from that to selling bags of coffee couldn't have been more of a sea change. Mm-hmm. So initially, I wasn't actually thinking of it in terms of a business. The reason this started is my wife was having some health issues, and she was just drinking a lot of coffee, like a lot of us do. She was sort of managing the fact that she didn't have the energy to get out of bed in the morning and drinking a lot of coffee. And I was trying to persuade her, as sort of an English tea drinker, that that was a bad idea. I felt like I was very educated by reading up articles on the internet that said coffee was bad for you. And this was sort of 8 years ago. So my wife, Amber, sort of threw down the gauntlet for me and said, look, I'm just not giving up my coffee unless you come with some hard evidence and some proof. And so I met two professors at the Institute of Coffee Studies in Vanderbilt. That's a longer story, and took them out to dinner. And I just asked, okay, so mixed bag. There's a lot of mixed messages about whether coffee is good for you or bad for you. What's the truth? And they gave me this very long shopping list of all the health benefits of coffee, prevention of type 2 diabetes, liver disease, the number one antioxidant in the American diet, this sort of thing. All of the coffee is one of the most well-studied foods on the planet. Over 20,000 studies on coffee and health over the last sort of 40 to 50 years. But basically, they led me to the next question, which is, okay, coffee seems to be very good for you. Who's making every decision based on health? They couldn't point me in the right direction. And so that sort of got me down this path of just starting to do some research and learning about it.
Do you think your background in tech helped drive the discoveries that you were making? I guess what parts of your tech background did you take with you into, I guess, the birth of Purity?
I think it was curiosity more than anything. So, one of the things about setting up in a different country, like we were in Brazil and Colombia, and we had 5 offices in Latin America, every country was different and every tax system was different. And so you really had to be curious. You had to be, okay, well, how do I figure this out? Or how would this work? And obviously people had gone before you and figured it out before, but sort of like understanding what the ecosystem would be in Latin America, where you're trying to mix really sort of the import regulations of 13 different countries, which is what we really had to do. So curiosity was, I think, very important for me.
Yeah. Okay. And so after all this curiosity, and clearly you made some discoveries, then what was okay, I'm turning the page and now I'm going to launch my next company and it's going to be a coffee business?
Yeah, I often think about businesses in terms of plateaus. Like you reach a certain plateau, is there enough proof that at that plateau that you want to go to the next plateau? So the first plateau for me was learning all about the health benefits of coffee, and then picking a coffee based on all of that criteria, then tasting the coffee, having it roasted in a way that's good for health, and then also tasting it, and then hopefully realizing that there was going to be a next platform that I would go and build from there. And the sort of the truth is, the very first coffee we tried, we were the victim of all the things that in the industry, I warn people of, which is they obviously didn't think I was very experienced in coffee, which I wasn't, and they gave me some of the worst coffee in the world. And the experiment almost ended right there, because when Amber and I tried the coffee, we were like, this is horrible, and it doesn't make us feel good. And we followed every rule, and we followed, Adriana Ferrar, who's the professor from the University of Brazil that I was working with. And so, luckily, through work with Ildi Revi, who's sort of like our head of coffee, she found another coffee that fit the criteria. We tested it again. That one was good. And then I just sort of, as a launch, I wanted to launch with a small group of friends and family and just see what the feedback was. And so the feedback was so positive that it allowed me to go to the next level, The
feedback just kept being positive, and more and more people were like, yeah, I'll take some too. Oh, that's
actually the thing I'm really, that's probably the single thing I'm most proud about, is that, after 8 years or so, we have 44,000 testimonials at a 4.9 star rating. But the reason I say that is because that's where the rubber meets the road. If you didn't ultimately come down to the product was something that people as consumers said, okay, I love this, it works well for me, it feels good in my body. That really is the sort of litmus test that we have something here.
Yeah, absolutely. Testimonials are, I'd say, pretty key. So you recently, because I received the email, you recently communicated with customers about the integrity of Purity Coffee. So I want you to talk a little bit about how you ensure that Purity is meeting the highest standards for quality and sustainability and health. Like, what specific practices are implemented to achieve all that?
And there's a lot of things to talk about there, and I'll tell you sort of like the mile high, the way that I would sort of like I focus on. The health benefits of coffee don't come from the absence of bad stuff. Just like you can avoid bad things, and that, those things that are bad in any particular product you want to avoid. So you want to avoid pesticides and heavy metals and mycotoxins and mold and all of the sort of things that would be bad for you. But that's relatively easy to do. That's relatively easy to do in the selection and the sorting and the standards and the independent lab testing we do. What's more difficult is how do you maximize the good stuff in coffee, which are things like the chlorogenic acids, which are the antioxidants, trigonylene, cafestol, kawiol, the lipids on the coffee. And so the only way to do that is to actually design a roast curve, which we do with the University of Brazil, so that we don't create any negative compounds when you roast the coffee. Either in the early stage, you can create acrylamide. In the later stages, PAH, which you get from any burnt food. But as you roast coffee, you roast away the antioxidants. So finding that sweet spot where the most amount of antioxidants and no acrylamide and no PAHs are very important. And then, of course, as a minimum, table stakes, avoid the bad stuff. But that isn't where that's just the beginning.
Yeah. Do you feel, is it a little bit more like paralyzing to be in the food space now, from the tech space, just in the sense of you have more people now where, they're literally in the business of trying to like debunk or trying to, reveal something like, oh, they're saying this, but hey, here's what I found. So is there anything with that, I know you've had to overcome a few things, and obviously you've done it with grace and with data. Data always is what solves most things, I think. But how has that been for you? Just, walking into that kind of an atmosphere from the tech side?
I think that is a similarity that I have with the tech side, which is that, when you're selling very expensive multi-million dollar pieces of equipment, people want to understand what's the return on investment? How will I actually measure that this is better for me? And in the case of technology, more productive for me in terms of results. So
Mm-hmm.
measurement has always been very important. And I also think it's very important that you admit what you don't know. Like, too many people say things that they obviously couldn't possibly know. And what we'll do is we're trying to be very transparent and say, this is what we know, this is what we don't know yet. But we know that we're leading the industry when it comes to all of those things. So I don't mind being, very transparent and saying, look, this is not knowable right now. Well, for example, we don't know the lipids on coffee, which are the oils on coffee. As they get older, about 15 to 20 days after roasting, those lipids can turn rancid. And the problem is eating rancid, obviously, any rancid oil would be bad for you. We don't know exactly how bad for you. We don't know. We just know to avoid it. So, I
Yeah.
mean, there are certain decisions which are, nobody's telling us, for example, that coffee treated with pesticides is better for you. So, I mean, we're like, so that was an easy decision. Let's just move on past that. But there's some decisions that were like, this is what science tells us. Like, for example, when you roast coffee, the darker you roast the coffee, you roast away the antioxidants. So you roast away the chlorogenic acids. But what's interesting with a darker roasted coffee, if you don't roast it too dark, is the chlorogenic acids turn into chlorogenic lactones. And that's very good for gut health and blood-brain barrier, Alzheimer's, dementia. Science tells us that you want more of that in coffee if that's your concern. But we don't know exactly what the result would be because we haven't done enough in vivo or in vitro studies on coffee, because it's very hard to get a group of people and say, I want 1,000 people over here. You don't drink coffee for all of your life and you can drink purity. I mean, as you can imagine, it's very difficult. So there is a certain amount of just like, we're going in the direction of this North Star. And
Right.
these are the decisions we've made. And the customers have to judge whether this is a good decision or a bad decision. And what we always encourage is pay attention to the way your body tells you you're reacting to this particular product. I mean, if your body reacts badly, it's not good for you. Move on. It's and
Amen
that's
to that.
thankfully not the case with us. It's been very positive.
Right. Okay, so I know, since I also was part of this, you recently launched a crowdfunding campaign for investment.
Yeah.
What motivated that decision, and how do you envision the funding to impact the future of the Purity brand?
I think for us, it's directionally important because, unlike the last business that I built up and sold, I really haven't got any intentions of selling Purity at any point, unless somebody could show me they could accelerate the growth of Purity in a way that better than I could do myself, which is always possible, but it's not my goal. My goal is, to carry on doing this. This is the first rung of the ladder. I want to make every decision based on health. And I know that some companies who've got a profit motive as their primary goal will make some decisions that would result in more profitability, but a lower quality product. And they make those decisions all the time. So there's a long way of saying that the value of crowdfunding for me is it allows me to go to my customers and interested sort of smaller parties who can invest, $500 if they want, and be an owner in the company and be along for the sort of journey of the company. And there's not a misalignment. The problem with venture capital and private equity is their goal. And there's nothing wrong with this. If you as a founder, your goal is to build a company up for sale, that's one direction, but you can automatically assume if you bring in people like that their intention is to help you build it up and sell it. And that's not my goal. So that's one of the reasons why crowdfunding, I think, is a really important direction. And it allows us to do some interesting things that private equity probably wouldn't ask us to do. And, we've self-funded the business up to this point, but I think now it's all about scale. I mean, we're growing very quickly. We're averaging around 97% growth a year in the last 7 years. So every year, consistent growth. But I think there's more opportunity now to scale. So
What are the IP opportunities given the types of roasting practices that you're doing? I feel like that's another potential differentiator for Purity compared to other, because there's so many coffee brands that have, sprouted up over the past, 5-10 years, I suppose. Right. And so I think that's interesting, even just based on what you were saying about just uncovering all these ways to to really ensure antioxidants are present or all these other, like, that's super cool. So yeah.
I really think IP is very interesting. It's the next direction. So I sort of I look for what I consider the high ground. And the high ground is, what's the place that we wish we would have owned when coffee and health becomes a category? And so IP is one of that points of high ground. It's like, do we want to be in True Food Kitchen and Canyon Ranch and places like that where health is the primary driver? IP and technology is important, but it's also important to distinguish between the problem with IP is if you take a pencil and you take an eraser and you put them together, you can't create IP on the fact that you put two existing things together, even though their functionality is slightly different. So there's a lot of pieces inside of coffee that you wouldn't necessarily have IP on, but there's also lots of really interesting areas in terms of fermentation. There's asparagine bars. There's ways to put, to make coffee even more nutrient dense with the compounds that we care about. So we're actually exploring that as an area, but it is very interesting. And one of the things we're doing, we just did a big a roasters forum in Colombia that we sponsored with 900 roasters and farmers who came along, and we've issued a prize, which is a big prize to basically say to any farmer who uses biochar. Biochar is a very old technology, but a very powerful organic sort of technology that allows more nutrients to be absorbed by the coffee plant and also water retention and that sort of thing. We created a prize because we wanted to share best practices among everybody in the industry. So there's a lot of things that we don't intend to own, but we want to give away. And we want to share those best practices because a rising tide. I mean, once this becomes a category, we're all going to benefit from that.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'm excited to learn more of that. Hopefully that'll be an email. Okay. So as you've stated, coffee is often criticized for its health implications as a tea drinker that you were. How do you use your brand, the brand messaging and the emails to address those common misconceptions, to teach people more about coffee, to promote the health benefits? I was on the website recently and I know it's sold out, but I think even talking about the founders roast that you did and how it benefited Hilarity for Charity and those types of, I guess, opportunities for you also to share with the audience. I think that's an interesting just element of the brand.
I think the thing is, we have to be very transparent and say what we do know. And so what we do know, which is very positive, is there's a lot of trend in recognizing that coffee is good for you. So there's 20,000 studies on the health benefits of coffee, everything from peer-reviewed studies on liver disease, heart disease, type 2 diabetes. So it's now getting to become much more sort of understood that coffee as the number one source of antioxidants in the American diet is very good for you. But everyone's going to react slightly differently. But I think the reason why this is so important in terms of branding is people need to dig a little deeper and understand what makes it good for them and what makes it bad for them. Right. So they need to understand, okay, sure, I want to avoid the bad stuff, but what is the good stuff that I could maximize that would likely to have health benefits? And I think probably the thing that I think is most important is that people are already drinking coffee. I mean, 164 million Americans will get up tomorrow morning and drink a cup of coffee. Given the fact that they're already doing this is a great 2% shift in their diet to do something they do every single day and improve that on a consistent basis. So we sort of joke that it's the supplement you never forget to take. I mean, it's like nobody forgets to take their cup of coffee in the morning.
I mean, oftentimes no, but I just think that, so yes, I think it's something that a lot of people can just get behind in the sense of, oh, I'm drinking a cup of coffee, it's good for my health. But there's so many differences between the McDonald's cup of coffee to a Purity cup of coffee. Or I have friends that will not go certain places because they know the quality of the coffee isn't great. And so I think it's those things that it's harder to message because I think people don't want to believe that the beverage that they're drinking contains the pesticides or the mold or all these other toxins that are just not really going to have those same benefits for their liver and their kidneys and everything else in their body. So I think that's the dimension of, I think it's more nuanced now because it's, even though the data is there telling us coffee is great for you, it's well, yes, but not all
Yes,
coffee is certainly produced the same, comes from the same place, stored the same way, goes through the
that's it.
same different, and I think that's the part where, Purity has set itself apart. And, other brands, there's others, but I'm a Purity person.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think that's the piece too that's more of a challenge, right? Is cutting through that noise of like gaining more customers that really understand, while they are drinking coffee, why they need to try the Purity's,
yeah.
brand over others.
I think the thing is, the law of unintended consequences. The value for us is that that over the years, and we never expected this to happen. I mean, we thought maybe coffee would be a little bit like fish oil, like you can make every decision based on health, and people go, "Oh, I trust this brand," but you really can't tell the difference between one fish oil and another one if you didn't trust a brand. We thought maybe that's what it was going to come down to. We need to be very transparent about, what we do that's different. But what happened was the 43,000 testimonials. I mean, some of these are a page long where people are writing that they couldn't drink coffee and this is the only coffee that they can drink, and, and the way they feel different and that sort of thing. So we didn't expect that to happen. But when it did happen, we were really glad that people would recognize a difference in their body. So, from a business point of view, one of the things that's very valuable with Purity as a company is that people are sticky to their brand of coffee, but when they understand that they're going to feel different as a result of it, if they give us a try, and they will see a difference and feel a difference in their body, and the direct result of that means they're very sticky to us.
Yeah,
and very loyal.
Yeah. Definitely loyal. I think you have a lot of loyalists, which is great. Okay, so I think the biggest thing that attracted me at first was the mold-free thing, because I went down rabbit holes about mold and coffee, and, and I just oh God, I can't do it.
Yeah,
so I want to talk a little bit about sourcing and how you do the sourcing. Did any of your ties in Latin America, because obviously we know that a lot of quality beans come from that area of the world. Did any of that come into play? But just, walk us through the sourcing process, the criteria that you used, and any challenges. You talked about the first, I guess, batch that you tried was pretty terrible. So just what that all looked like.
I think the thing is, so mold mycotoxins is a great example of something which is a relatively easy decision, is easy to implement, and you should do this, but it isn't complicated. So, for example, if you take a container of coffee, to lab test that whole container of coffee, to do sample lab testing for mold and mycotoxins, is around $200. $200 for the whole container. It's nothing. Every coffee company in the world should be testing for mold and mycotoxins. Why, as consumers, do we have to wonder if there is mold and mycotoxins in our food? I mean, it is so cheap to do. It is so basic. It should be a given for everybody. So, should you do it? Absolutely. But should it be a standard for everybody? Yes. But the problem is that Europe has those standards. They have standards for ochratoxin A and all this sort of thing. But so coffee that maybe is not treated as well at origin is often sent to the US. And so, we can fix it just by saying we're going to lab test the coffee. And as consumers, we should all be asking that the supply chain has been tested to make sure that it's food safety. And so often one of the problems with coffee is it's produced in humid climates, and that means that there's more likely that mold is developed. And so mold can be developed at any stage in the process, all the way through from picking to bags that are left on the side of the road to when they clean and process the coffee. There are lots of ways that mold can develop. The only way that you can be assured that your coffee doesn't have mold and mycotoxins. So mold is basically the food for mycotoxins. So mycotoxins, you can have no mold on your coffee. Your coffee doesn't look green, but it can have mycotoxins on the coffee. The only way to find out if your coffee is free from mycotoxins, and every coffee company should do this, is there should be a certification that is independently lab tested to be free of mold and mycotoxins. So as a consumer, you should absolutely demand that of any coffee you drink, whether it's ours or anyone else. things, you know.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I appreciate that. And I think that's a really good billboard. But just also, do you recall any other hurdles for yourself when you were getting started in the sourcing of the beans and just any just
Yeah.
interesting discoveries that you had? Because obviously, as the company grew, you were learning along the way about just various things. So anything that was memorable for you that you think back on and you're like, oh yeah, that was an interesting, hurdle, or that
Yeah.
was an interesting, enlightening discovery about coffee sourcing that I wouldn't have expected. I don't know.
Yeah, the biggest thing by far is the fact that we decided in the early days we would make every decision based on health and we wouldn't compromise.
Right.
And so while we cared about the environment, it wasn't our major goal. In other words, we're not going to make environmental decisions, then make health decisions on the coffee. We were always making health decisions on the coffee. But then we started to recognize something about 4 years back, and we started to recognize that some of the labels of coffee that we were buying, we're always buying organic. It was always organic, regeneratively farmed, but we were starting to notice things like that the coffee was certified to be Smithsonian bird friendly. And Smithsonian bird friendly means that migratory birds land in the coffee. And we were thinking, well, why does that matter? Well, why it matters is because it shows that the coffee is grown in its natural conditions, in wild conditions, and it's not industrial farming. And the big aha moment is, since we've lab tested coffee from the first day that we produced a bag of coffee all the way for the last 8 years, we've recognized that coffee grown close to close to nature and close to the environment has more CGAs and has more antioxidants than normal mass-produced industrial coffee. So we're like, this is incredible. I mean, we saw a correlation where we're like, okay, if we could look for these labels, if we can look for Demeter certified and biodynamic and hand-picked, hand-selected, and we move away from machine-picked and, machine sorted, that there would be higher levels of antioxidants. And so then what we did a few years back, about 3 years ago, we bought a farm in Colombia so that we could experiment on a farm level, sort of experimenting with the soil to see if what we did on the soil would actually have an impact with the coffee. Because there's a little bit of a roadmap for us, because people weren't buying coffee based on health. They weren't producing coffee based on health. And because of that, they weren't making the decisions that they knew that they could make, and we knew that they could make, because there wasn't a financial incentive. So what we started doing is paying them more money, doing micro lending, and also lending them money so that they can make these moves on the farm. So there are things like biochar, biodigesters, in other words, like avoiding methane. There's a lot of things that we do in our production of coffee with our collaboration with the farmers that they wouldn't do unless they were paid a bigger premium as a result of making coffee based on health. And there's a long list of those type of things, from the quality of the water they use to the biochar on the ground, and how they're avoiding methane. And there's a lot of things in that process that makes a big difference when it comes to food safety that they wouldn't naturally do.
I think that's an interesting point too. A lot of people, when they think about testing their coffee, unless you're testing the direct bean versus that cup of coffee, the water that you're brewing your coffee in could be contaminated with a whole host of terrible things. And it's not the beans, it's the water. So, there's all these enlightening rabbit holes to go down. The perfect storm, right? Yeah. Okay, so I also want to talk about, so in 2020, I think it was 2022, you launched a rebranded product line. So it was something where the bags had specific names on them that were emphasizing health a little bit more prominently: balance, calm, ease. Mm-hmm. I know that you said, there's tons of testimonials online, tons and tons and tons. Are there some striking ones? I mean, outside of someone that said, I never could drink coffee before, that is a pretty striking one. But anything maybe where someone had a health affliction or something that was more obvious that you recall?
Yeah. The big thing that, I would say there's a barbell of customers who come to us. There's people who, on one side of the barbell is the people who naturally do all these things that are healthy. They do yoga and supplements and, they exercise, watch what they eat, but they ignore their coffee because it's like, okay, just don't mess with my coffee. This is my one bad habit. And then they realize, wow, I should pay attention to this because I can pay attention and it'll make a difference. The other side of the barbell is the people who suffer from the sort of afflictions that coffee can help with. And so one particular group, which I think, that resonates very strongly with our coffee is people who have mast cell. So mast cell activation syndrome, people who really have to do and really exclude things from their diet, and when they introduce or reintroduce those things, they'll flare up immediately if that product is not good for them. They're the canary in the mine sort of thing. And that's really that's the group that can drink our coffee. So for them, we're a lifesaver. I mean, it's like people who really can't drink coffee, or people with elevated liver enzymes as well. That's a really interesting category of people. Coffee is one of the, Dr. Sanjeev Chopra is on our advisory board. And basically his focus is obviously on the liver, his heptologist. And he says of all the things that you can do in terms of like diets and that sort of thing, there is nothing that's more profound than coffee. For every cup that you drink from the baseline, so if you drink 1 cup and you decide you move to 2, there's a 20% lower chance of ever developing fatty liver, liver cirrhosis, or end-stage liver disease from each additional cup of coffee. And so if you drink alcohol, you should be drinking coffee. So,
I like that. Like, chase your liquor with some coffee.
Yeah, that's right. Or at least the next day.
I like it. No, that's really interesting, actually. I think that's a really good PSA for anybody that might be suffering from any of that. That's quite powerful. Okay, so have you experienced any other obstacles or challenges that you recall in promoting a health-focused coffee brand?
I think there's a preconception that the coffee, in order for it to be healthy, isn't going to taste as good. Like there's this feeling of like, oh, maybe it's wheatgrass, and then I'm going to have to choke it down and don't mess with my coffee. The good news is, and when we first looked at this, and I said to Adriana, who ran this project initially for me, I said, I don't care if it's $200 a bag and it ends up being tasting like ditch water. I want to know what happens if we make every decision based on health and we don't compromise.
Yeah.
The good news was that the results were, it's a little bit like an organic strawberry, or, it tastes great. It's fantastic. And you go, wow, this is what a strawberry is meant to taste like. Right. This is what coffee is meant to taste like.
Yeah.
So that was a hurdle.
I will attest to that. It is, I drink the dark roast ease, right? Mm-hmm. And so it is, to me, just very smooth. There's such a contrast. I try and take a little advertisement here for you. I try and take my travel pouches of coffee with me. But then again, it's like the water problem, because the water will also affect how great the brew is, right? So having the filtered water at home certainly enhances the purity coffee. Okay, so let's talk about the growing trend of health-conscious consumers. And also, I think, interesting, the movement to make America healthy again. Yeah. How do you see coffee and the coffee industry evolving in terms of wellness and sustainability as we move forward?
I think people will start to recognize it. So one of the things that I sort of focus on is people buy coffee based on, cost or convenience or in some cases, especially coffee taste. But if they realize the health benefits that are associated with coffee, like I do, they would buy for a fourth reason. They would buy based on health, and they would pay attention to those sort of things. So I think that in the industry, people are going to start to recognize that coffee for health is a real thing, that as a category, it needs to be treated differently. We need to pay attention to the way the coffee is roasted and the way that coffee is grown. And also we need to do the basic bare minimum things, that the low bar for every coffee company should be mold and mycotoxin free, should be tested for, my personal belief is that all coffee should be organic, but that's my personal belief. But as a minimum, I believe that it needs to be tested for mold and mycotoxins, heavy metals, that sort of thing, because why not? It's such a cheap fix. It's just, and the only reason you wouldn't do it is because you would rather accept coffee that's of a lower standard and hope the consumer doesn't notice. And that's not fair,
I do think that is something that's happening because, people will create jazzy packaging or, they'll have fun marketing, but it doesn't mean that the product is actually good for you. So there's some deception out there where you really do have to dig in a little bit more on what you're buying. I think we're in a new age where, because of just the amount of choice that exists, you have to be much more diligent about, where you want to put your money and who actually cares for you. Because I think also, to your point, there are so many small food-based businesses that are just created for acquisition. I mean, and that's the goal, right? It's not really to enhance someone's health. It's created to enhance someone's wallet.
And I think that's the nice thing about this trend is that as consumers are becoming more educated about the things that they want in their foods, the standards that they have, and the sharing is more, is faster, it's more prolific. I mean, the ability to just share and say, I like this brand, I like this product, I feel different on this, I don't like this is just marketing, avoid this concept. So, I really feel like transparency is going to be an important part. And I also think after COVID, people are realizing that they actually have to pay attention to their overall health in the food that they eat. And it's much more proactive than, than waiting until you need sort of medical intervention of some sort.
Yes, amen to that. Okay, I asked this of everyone. I want to know, Andrew, what does wellness mean to you?
It's being holistic, I think. I mean, holistic in the sense that it's not one thing. It's mental wellness as well as emotional wellness as well as in the food, and it's that balance. It's that holistic balance of saying, sometimes I'm going to treat myself, and sometimes I'm going to eat really, really well, and then, but it's that overall balance that says it's an upward sort of like spiral. I'm concentrating and improving my overall wellness with the foods that I eat.
So how do you maintain your wellness amidst the demands of running a successful business?
I think purchasing is probably one of the easiest things to do. I mean, we live in a world where, think food can be delivered to our door, and the best food in the world can be delivered and can be, grass-fed beef if you want. Just the options are unlimited. So we live in that world. And I think that's, it's important to take the time to educate yourself about, what is the best in a particular product. And we have that flexibility and that ability wherever we live, that it can be delivered to us. And I think that to me is probably the most important thing. And then, I don't think it's news to anyone, just the basics of just exercising and going for a walk and being outside, eating well, that sort of thing.
Okay, so for you, are there any like daily wellness non-negotiables? So like basically if you don't start your day with one thing, 5 things, whatever it is, the day isn't as good as it could be.
I think my big non-negotiable is TM meditation. Like 20 minutes to meditate in the morning, 20 minutes to meditate in the afternoon. That sort of sets my day up in the right way. If I don't meditate, I notice the difference. So, that to me is very important, that one thing.
Okay. PSA for meditation. I like it. And then when does the coffee come into your day?
First thing in the morning. It's a ritual for us, me and my wife. It's just one of these things. I get up in the morning. I'm normally first up, and I make the coffee, and we sit in bed and we talk, and it's a very much a ritual. I don't start the day until 10 o'clock, so I get up typically at 6. And I start the day at 10. So I always have that first 4 hours to sort of like relax into the day. And, and that to me is very balancing. It's very
I applaud that, Andrew. Yes, I accept that. That is great. How has your perspective on wellness changed through the years? So, now that you've navigated into this world of health and wellness, are there any just things that you wouldn't have expected to have a changed perspective on, or just anything surprising to you where you reflect back and go, huh?
I think it's what an interesting age that we're living in. So Ray Kurzweil talks about the longevity singularity, and the idea that we're going to reach a certain age within about 10 to 15 years, that the technology for our lifespan is going to be accelerating at such a pace that for every year we live, we have a life expectancy of over a year. So in other words, there's a tipping point. And I think that's changed a lot about most people's focus on sort of health and longevity, which is that it used to be this balance of like, I want to live life, but at the same time, I want to eat well because I've got a limited lifespan and I want to have healthy years. And I think the idea of this sort of longevity singularity is the fact that we could reach a certain tipping point where by eating well and exercising well and looking after ourselves, we'll reach a point where we can can live a lot longer than normal sort of lifespans. And I think paying attention to that is, very important.
So that was not something that you were paying as much attention to in your tech life.
No, not at all. I mean, not at all. I mean, really, out of sight, out of mind. I mean, it was just one of these things. I mean, if I think back in Latin America with late big dinners in Argentina and red wine, and no, I don't think I was the poster child of how to eat well. And
well, I don't know. They would probably argue that, those Argentinians, their steak and wine is, and they seem to live okay. So I don't know. I mean, there's arguments on both sides, I suppose. Now, because so much of this was birthed because of challenges your wife was having, what for her has changed? Has anything in her perspective on wellness shifted based on the last 8 years?
I think a lot. I mean, she's been in the same sort of evolution as that I've been on, which is that almost every day, especially in the early days, I would read a study about, coffee and endometrial cancer, or coffee and the liver, and all of these studies. And I was blown away that this wasn't more common knowledge, even though I didn't know about this beforehand. I'm like, this is amazing that people don't know about this. And she's been on a similar path with me, which is the importance of paying attention to the food that you eat, and just the things that you do on a daily basis. So I mean, what we focus on a lot is, what are the things that we do every single day? Are they good for us or are they bad for us? Every single day, what are the things, the habits that we could either change to improve or to cut out? And focusing on those things means that it has a real impact in your overall life, because it's not about generally whether you should eat more wheatgrass than other people. It's like, if you drink coffee every day, or if you eat eggs every day, or if you eat bread every day, whatever your particular thing is, maximize the quality of that particular product, because you do it every single day.
Yes, I think that is well said. I do think that once you kind of enter into the wellness universe, it quickly, I think a lot of people get very overwhelmed initially because it's just like, oh, wow, I have to change everything. And that's a pretty big pill to swallow. But I think once you kind of start like peeling the onion a little bit, everything kind of just gets easier, because you're just basically getting back down to, what's the most holistic approach? What's the kind of the most simple? Because I feel like, so many things are just, there's too many ingredients and things. So it's like, when you go back to the basics, there's a lot of wellness just in that, right? Like,
and just, as in business, the Pareto principle. 80% of the staff, focus on the thing that's likely to have the biggest impact in your life. And so what are the things you do every single day? How can you maximize those? How can you go for an extra 5 minutes a day for a walk? Or how do you just, how do you decide you want to get sunlight for the very first thing that you do in the morning? There's moves that you can make, I think, that are relatively small adjustments because you do it every single day. And then save for later those things that you go, well, I really should have an ice bath. Maybe you should, but is that what you're going to do every single day?
Not me, but yes, I get what you're saying. Okay, so we're going to do a quick fire, and then there's a few questions left. So it's just really the first thing that comes to mind. Are you an early bird, or I guess you're kind of an early bird, or a night owl?
I think I peak at midday.
No, you're a midday bird. Okay.
I get up at 6, which isn't particularly early, but I like to work relatively late, so I probably don't sleep as much as I should. Maybe I should say that.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs would answer that in that way, though. Not a lot of sleep happening. What is your favorite color?
Blue.
What is the first paying job that you ever had?
Stocking shelves at a convenience store in England.
Okay, how much coffee did you stock at that time? Do you remember?
I don't even remember. I wasn't even conscious of coffee at that time, although I'm sure I could have used some.
What is your favorite cuisine?
I love Thai. Thai and sushi, I think, probably would rank high up there, but Thai definitely.
Okay. What is your favorite purity roast?
I'd say flow. I mean, it seems a little bit boring, but it's just it's the basic middle of the road roast. It makes a fantastic pour over. So I love that.
Okay. It's like
Yeah.
good for people to know this. What's your favorite band?
There's something funny about me. I don't listen to music and I don't watch sports.
No music, nothing.
No music, no sports.
Okay. Okay.
Books
All
on
right.
tape. I mean, you'll always find a book on tape that I'm listening to when I go on a walk or whatever. I think I bought 5 pieces of music in my whole life.
Oh, do you remember which 5 they were?
Oh, you would hate this. One was a punk group called Sticky Little Fingers.
Okay.
The other one was I don't remember. It was heavy metal. I mean, it was definitely heavy metal. I stopped buying when I was 16. That was like
Okay.
I had my spurts when I was 16 of buying music. So
My husband is a heavy metal singer, so I'm like, oh, this is
Oh,
interesting,
really?
Andrew, to know about you.
Yeah.
What is your favorite country that you've traveled to since you've traveled?
Okay, so this is long. I mean, I've gone to 94 countries now, and so I would say Fiji for beaches. Fiji is fantastic for beaches. That's probably one of my favorite countries in the world. I love
Okay.
Australia, I love Bali. Yeah, lots of
Coastal.
places, but Fiji.
Okay, Fiji. What is the one phone app that you can't live without? I have to say phone now, since a couple interviews ago they thought I meant food appetizer.
I don't know. Because I just don't. I mean, again, this is the weird thing because I was in Latin America. I think I missed a lot of the technology sort of rush. I very seldom check my phone. In fact, most people can't reach me. I mean, I really am. I mean, it's almost criminally bad. I mean, I have somebody checking emails and stuff for me.
No,
I
that's
never
good.
get. I never get hooked by technology in any way. I mean,
Wow. I mean, no, I feel like so much of us we'd be better off if we answered the same way you just did. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. Okay. What's the one word that you would use to describe your business journey?
I mean, very interesting. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, it's like I'm constantly looking at new things that I didn't realize, and we're just cutting it. It's very interesting.
If you could have any entrepreneur as a mentor for a day, anyone, who would you want?
I'd say Richard Branson.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
He's what's impressive to me is he's able to build a very successful business at the same time having a real impact, and so he doesn't compromise the two, and he makes every business model one that means that both things function very well.
Yes, I like that answer.
And his quality of life is phenomenal.
Yes.
I've been to Necker Island. I just know. I mean, he swims around the island once a day. I mean, and he's done this all of his life. He's very healthy. He enjoys life. He raises a lot of money for charities like Strive, where he's done literally hundreds of miles on a bike for charity. I mean, it's incredible.
Yes, I've always been a fan of him. What's a book, given that you're a book person, what's a book that has significantly influenced your mindset?
Probably any Tony Robbins book. I mean, Tony Robbins is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as a coach, Unleash the Power, one of his classics, one of his first books. But I would say like that really got me on the path. I've always loved to read, but I think anything with Tony Robbins is just a must read.
Yes. Besides your own, what is another favorite growing business?
I like the whole sort of things of the business of carbon offsets. I know that sounds a little boring, but it's like, what I find so interesting is there's a new marketplace developing where we're giving financial reasons to do the right thing and have a real global impact. And that to me is very interesting because it's aligning business motivation with people who are maybe polluting and doing bad things, let's say an airline, but they can actually offset their carbon in a way that's good for the environment. And that sort of balance and that sort of methodology, I think, is really interesting. We're in the early stages, but I think the marketplace for carbon offsets is very interesting.
Cool. Okay. If you could instantly acquire one new skill, what would it be instantly?
To type.
Okay. Okay. If you could
My
time
hunting
travel,
deck is very
that's
sad.
fine. That's okay. You've got people now, so it's fine. If you could time travel to any period in history, which era would you visit?
I don't know, honestly. I mean, I would love to visit my great grandparents and that sort of thing. I think that would be 100 years ago. I think that would be really interesting, especially in England, just to sort of have a perspective of where I came from and that sort of thing. But it's probably,
I love
probably that.
that. So, like 1920s England?
Yeah.
Okay. And if you weren't doing this, running Purity, what else might you be doing?
It's funny because purity was such a big shift from me from what I was doing before.
Right.
It's a difficult question to answer, but I would say that I would be doing something more on the environment. I mean, I think I would be focused on.
Mm.
I think there's a big wave coming. I think in the environmental wave that people are understanding that they can have an impact. And I think that's a movement. I think that's going to be a very interesting movement, and I think I would be somewhere in the environmental space.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, that's great. So, okay, now let's look ahead. What innovations or future projects that you can share do you have in mind for Purity? Like, could be new products, new initiatives, just anything that is exciting for you.
There's a couple, but I think what we're doing on a soil level is the most interesting.
Yeah, that's really cool.
The fact that the nutrients in the soil have a direct relation to the nutrients in the food that you eat,
Oh,
and
yes.
what can we do in a soil level to maximize those nutrients, and things like biochar, which is this 6,000-year-old technology that basically is when they took organic waste and they set fire to it and they put a light layer of dirt on it and it created this activated charcoal. They did it because of bigger yields and all this sort of thing and water retention. This was 6,000 years ago in indigenous Indians, but now we're starting to realize that biochar actually sequesters carbon and puts it down into the soil. So it has that sort of impact in terms of like, it's good for the environment, it sequesters carbon, and it's good for the plants.
Yeah.
So that's my pet project.
And I feel like there's a lot of, or at least I'm just discovering them now, but there's companies now that are really focusing on soil regeneration. And I find all of that to be so necessary, given just how much, at least in the US, the amount of chemicals that our soil contains at this point. Any of these organizations that are making it their mission to improve our soil, I'm applauding. I'm hoping I can help in some way because I think it's just so important for the integrity of our food. So yes, love that. Okay. And then what advice would you give if, you were in a convo with an aspiring entrepreneur, could be someone in food and bev, but maybe not. What advice would you give them about business?
Probably the start is just find the biggest problem that you think you can solve. I mean, like, be problem focused. I mean, it's like, what really annoys you, or what frustrates you, or what do you think is like, this shouldn't be this way, and try and find a solution to that problem that impacts the most amount of people. So in other words, you find a problem that impacts billions of people, that is the path to becoming a billionaire. It's like, you have to, the bigger the problem that you focus on, the more success you're likely to have, and also the more leverage you get because there's other people who want you to succeed. So finding out who your allies are and who the people who want you to win is very important, so that you're sort of like, if you're rowing in one direction, there's other people who are rowing in the same direction and they're trying to address the same problem. So the bigger the problem you're trying to address, the more people are trying to solve it in different ways.
Yeah. That's a good one. Okay, so Andrew, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you were hoping we would?
I think probably, especially as we're talking about entrepreneurs and they're starting their business, one big thing for me that I focus on that has been a real validation point for us is that when we first were in Inc. 5000, and we've now been in Inc. 5000 for 4 years in a row as one of the fastest growth coffee companies in the US, if not the fastest, because they in their history they've never had a coffee company that's been 4 years or more in a row on the Inc. 5000, and so we're presently 4 years and counting. So it's a very good sign for us, we feel.
4 years and more and beyond. Yes, I don't see why that would stop. So what are the Like, what benefits has that brought to Purity?
I think it's just a validation that this is a category. I think it's helped us with crowdfunding. I think the fact that people see that the underlying business is sound and that we're growing really quickly is a validation that helps with crowdfunding, because it's people will recognize that you can make money and be successful while at the same time doing some good. So I really feel like that is a good external validation of our growth.
Yeah, I definitely, in my mind, Andrew, I have like visions of some kind of a cover with me on it on Inc. magazine, I don't know what it'll be, Andrew. I don't know. I don't know. But we'll just keep planting those seeds of potential out there.
Yeah, I'll support that.
All right. So I think we should share some socials. I know that the Instagram for Purity is purity_coffee. I'm not sure about some of your others. Obviously, the website is puritycoffee.com. Yeah. And there's a promo code, which I've been given, so that at checkout, if you're a new Purity person, you can get 20% off using the code Dean's List. So thanks to Melissa. Shout out. Thank you for setting that up for all of these listeners. But is there any other places, Andrew, where people could find Purity if they wanted? I don't know if you guys are on X or TikTok or...
I don't think we're on X. I think we are on TikTok, but it's just go to our site or Amazon, puritycoffee.com, go to Amazon, and I think...
I think you guys are pretty easily findable. So thankfully you're good. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for answering all the questions. I hope you had fun. I know that you do this often enough, Andrew, where, you're one of those people where someone that's been on a lot of podcasts, you're like, okay, what questions are going to be like at least somewhat new, different? And it's like, you really it's like you really put your like Barbara Walters cap on. I'm like, how can I just like go somewhere else with this? Anyway, it's been a pleasure, and I'm so happy to have had you on the show. So thank you for being on the Dean's List.
All right, thanks, Allison. Appreciate it.
And thank you all for tuning into this episode of the Dean's List. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to stay updated, and follow us on Instagram at official_Dean's List and YouTube at It's Official Dean's List. I'm your host, Allison Dean. Until next time.